All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to this session about enhancing apps with the Fluent Design system. My name is Johan Laanstra. I am a software engineer at Microsoft. On this slide, you can find some of my contact details, my email, my GitHub, and my Twitter. The slides are full of links to background information, additional information that is useful for developers. And I will publish the slides on my GitHub after this talk. So remember that, and you can click on all the links and get all the background info wherever needed. I am on the Windows Next team, and the Windows Next team in Microsoft is responsible for all the apps that ship with Windows inbox. So like that includes photos, videos, the maps, and my team specifically owns the voice recorder, alarms and clock, and the calculator app. And those apps were internally one of the first apps in Microsoft that were enhanced with the Fluent Design system, and we were one of the first teams to use this. So today we will see all the different elements of the Fluent Design system, and we will implement them on stage in the calculator app. So we'll start with a little introduction. Then we will use the APIs to add Fluent to the calculator app. And then we will see some resources that you can use as developers to get started today. Everything in this talk is available in the Fall Creators Update SDK that we published earlier this week. And the things that I will add to the calculator app are not necessarily going to be shipped. It's important to note some of the things are already available on everyone's machine with the Fall Creators Update. But we will add some things to the calculator that we are trying out, we are prototyping, and will not necessarily end up on your machines. So we'll talk about the concepts, then focus on the implementation, and use the controls and the patterns. So let's start with the introduction. So the playground of devices is expanding massively. 10 years ago, we started with the mostly 2D devices like tablets, computers, phones. Well, recently, in the last couple of years, phones expanded. There were more devices on your wrist, and large screen devices like the Surface Hub. Now, on the 3D side, we added things like the HoloLens and recently the mixed reality headsets. And on the 0D side, we have the new devices without a screen, like speakers that you can talk to. And those devices have all kinds of different inputs. So we have the traditional mouse keyboard. We have touch on the tablets and the phones, and now also on the large screen devices. Most of these devices also support voice input, and some of the devices have pen inputs as well. Now on the 3D side, we have the additional inputs that you can use with your hands, and we have like gaze as an input, like where are you looking? And on the 0D side, we also have like, are you in the room kind of input for the smart speakers to know if you're actually in the area. Now on the output side, there's things like sound, haptic feedback, and visuals, of course, on screens. So we want to really expand our design system to cover all these possible inputs and outputs and all these different device types. The second thing that motivated the Fluent Design system is that users are getting more and more creative every day. You can see that when people use Snapchat to send a picture and add some funny effects to them. You can see it with Minecraft, and more 3D is added to the experiences. So really what we wanted to do is we wanted to go from a flat design language that was primarily focused on mobile tablets and phones to a more immersive and multi-dimensional design. And we want to go span from all the small screens and touch to like all the devices, like the 3D and the 0D device, and support all the possible inputs and outputs that those devices have. And we want to embrace creativity in that design, so that people don't only make things with the design, but you can be creative with the design yourself. Now, one of the things that we thought was really important for the Fluent Design was that we don't just go dark for 5 years and then dump some new design system on everyone where we have figured out everything. This is really a journey that we are taking together with everyone, and we will have multiple waves of this of the Fluent Design system. So what we have available right now is what we call wave 1, and there will be additional waves coming in the future. Now on build, the app team showed like a really nice video, and I wanted to share that with you as well. So let's take a look at what we have available today, and hopefully the audio works. So with the Fluent Design system, we're trying to unlock everyone's creativity by enabling rich, immersive, multidimensional experiences that adapt to all the different input and output types. So in wave 1, we have the following 5 elements available. We have light, material, motion, scale, and depth, and we will see how these 5 elements translate into actual things that you can add to your app in the rest of the presentation. So let's start with the first one, light. So the first light that we have available in the for creators, so this is what we call reveal. And light is really nice because it shows where the focus in the app is, where you are currently in your app. It really gives the sense of where are you looking, where are you currently interacting with. And we can see that in the calculator by where you see that like as we hover with the mouse, that the elements around it light up, and as soon as you actually press, and I'm going to mute the audio because it's distracting, you can see that there is borders showing up, and also when you press on it, there is actual feedback that you're pressing. And this doesn't only work with mouse; this also works with keyboard and pen input as well. And here we have another example in the People app, where you can see that the buttons here are around the actual button that you're clicking on are lighting up. And the same applies to the list view items. And the nice thing is that this works by default on a lot of inbox controls. So like list view by default has this reveal effect applied to it. Now for controls that don't have it applied to it, it's very easy for you to add this by using the button reveal style. This button reveal style is inbox. It's available as part of the SDK, and we'll see how to add this in a moment. But just set the style on your button to button reveal style, and you will get this effect. And you don't have to do anything else. We have this style not only for button but also for toggle button and a whole set of other button-like controls that we will see in a second, and we'll also see how you can find more of these additional styles that we ship. Now the second element that we have is material. Now the first material that we have available with the 4 creators of this is what we call acrylic. And the reason we added material to this is so that the apps and the things that have the material applied to them feel more natural, feel like more like let's say a table or a chair. Like those are also made from materials to give like a more real life experience. And it also really works nice with the mixed reality environments where just a flat white surface is just like less natural than like something that actually looks like something like an item. So we can see that here in the alarms app, we applied this in the full screen mode where you you can really see that the background kind of blends through the window. And this is not just some kind of fancy opacity trick. There's actually some effects like a blur and other effects that are together combined that make this acrylic material. And you can use acrylic to generate like a multi-stage UI. So you can see that here we have a panel on the left that is a little more opaque than the panel in the middle. And therefore you can create like put the focus on certain UI elements more than the focus on other UI elements. Now the way to add this is to use an acrylic brush. We added a component of the SDK called XAML composition base brush, brush base, which is the underlying brush that allows you to take the composition effects and apply them to XAML in a very easy and nice way. So before this update, that wasn't possible. Your composition effects would always be separate, and you would have to write a lot of boilerplate code to get them to work together. Now we have XAML composition brush base, and you can even use that to create your own effects. If you don't like the inbox effect, the acrylic brush, you can create your own effects. And we will also see that acrylic brush is actually exactly inheriting also from XAML composition brush base. So this is not something that we just give you that we don't use internally. No, acrylic brush is built on top of the XAML composition brush base. The third element that we have is motion. Now motion is really useful to create a coherent UI where you don't go from page to page and it looks like a stuttering kind of experience. So you can really move to the next page. And one of the places you can see that today is in photos, where you click on a photo and it just kind of zooms in. It doesn't look like you click on it and now you're on a new page with a new photo. No, and it also works when you go back. When you go back, the image can get smaller again. Now, the way to do this is to use the connected animation service. A connected animation service, you basically give it the UI elements you want to animate, then you do your navigation and you say, okay, this element goes there on the page, and then the framework takes care of all the transitions. And we also have very fine-grained APIs that give you more control about how the animation works and what shows up. And you can all find that when you click on the link on this slide. Now the fourth element is scale. So I already talked about this in the beginning, where we really want you to enable your apps to work on a multitude of devices. So we really want to scale to all the different inputs that are available today. And one of the things that we have right now, we're still figuring out new things and more things, is the conscious scroll bar. So the scroll bar is very small until you move the mouse close to it, and then it will get wider. And that is one of the ways that the UI becomes conscious of your input type. Another example you can see is where the mouse moves over the pictures and the pictures kind of zoom in and create this situation where you can really see where your input is, where your focus is. Now we have some more of these scalable inputs available today. For example, text box can get big and support like pen input and really make the input area much bigger. So it's much better for pen input. And for touch, we added swipe. Swipe is really nice input type for touch, and we'll see some implementation of swipe later in the calculator as well, which we don't currently have, but it's nice to add. And there's more background around swipe under the link. Now the fifth element and the last element is depth. Like I said before, we really want to move away from the flat 2D designs and create something with like multiple layers. And depth also works much nicer in the mixed reality environments. Now, one of the things that you can see depth today is in the parallax. So we have a parallax view in the 4 Creators Update, and an example of that is the Store app. The Store app has a really nice implementation of parallax where you can see that when you scroll, the background images are kind of in a separate layer that is further away and moves slower than the rest of the app. So under Parallax View, you can find more details on how to implement and edit in an app. So let's get into the details. How are we going to add this in an app like a calculator app? Now, I have this is the real calculator project. We have a calculator project and a Calc Manager app. A Calc Manager project. What is in it isn't important. I have the files that we're going to use listed here on the right. This is the real calculator code base. This is not some fake calculator that I made as a demo. This is actually the calculator without any Fluent in it. So you'll see that it looks slightly different from what you have on your machine today. And you can see that while we hover, there's no effect, there's no borders lighting up. Nothing fancy is happening here. What we can see is that when we go in the menu, you'll actually see that the effects are already light up here. That's because we use the standard inbox list view, and as I said, the effects are applied automatically to this control. So we don't have to do anything, and we get it for free in list views. Now the thing that we get for free is the scroll bar. We move to the scroll bar, it gets bigger, so we also don't have to do anything to get that effect automatically for free. Now let's start with adding some reveal in. All the buttons in the calculator that you have are predefined using a style that we have here, which is called, I need to scroll more, which is called the Calc button style. Now, like I said, it's very easy. You just base your style on the button reveal style, and it will automatically light up for you. That's basically all I have to do to add reveal to my buttons. Now, how do you find these styles? Now, the nice thing is that all the styles that are in the system ship with the SDK. So there are two files that are important in the SDK that you really want to look at. And I didn't update the link, so let me just open them manually. No folder. So we're going to the SDK, which is on my C drive, and the program files, Windows kits, then design time, common configuration, neutral, UWP. We take the For Creators Update SDK, and then under generic, there's two XAML files that contain all the styles for all the controls that we ship inbox. We have both generic.xaml and theme resources. Now, generic.xaml is the file that really contains all the control styles. So if we search here, you can find button reveal style. So here we see the button reveal style that we ship inbox, and it's really useful for you to have, because if you want to add this reveal effect to a control that we don't provide a style for, you can see in the template how we actually apply the different properties to get this effect. Now, theme resources is really useful because theme resources contains all the different brush types that we have, and defines them for all the 3 themes that Windows supports. So we have light, dark, and high contrast. And we really recommend using the built-in brushes, because for the built-in brushes, the XAML team has made sure that they work correctly in all the different high contrast experiences and are accessible, and all the controls look correct on top of all the brushes that we ship in the box. And we'll see some of these brushes soon. So let's see, we added a button reveal style. Now let's see how this looks. So we're going to build it. Will hopefully not take too long, because it's just a sample change. And then we will see this effect soon applied to the buttons. Now, VS is of course taking its time. There we go. Build is starting. And it's done. It's deploying. And now we can see that we have that the buttons, the borders automatically light up as our mouse moves closer to the elements, and it fades out again when we move away from it. And there's a very subtle effect that if you're in the middle between buttons, you can see that those borders light up as well. Is this clearly visible for people in the back as well? No? Okay, let me do this magnifier. So now you can see that that the border actually lights up, and also in the top here. Let me move this out of the way. You can see that this effect shows up. There are some buttons though that don't have this effect applied. As you can see that there is some light on the button. That's not happening here for the plus and the minus. It's a static color still, and that is because those buttons that we use the accent color from the system. And there is no button reveal style that you can use with your accent color. So we have to define our own in that case. So let's take a look how we do that. We have this accent operated button style here. That is based on the operated button style, which is based on the calc button style. So it should get all the effects by default, but we have our visual states overridden. So we will get the standard experience that we had before we started applying reveal to this. Now, we can see that we are using some predefined brushes here, and we can replace those brushes by a reveal brush. The reveal brushes that we ship in box you can find very easily in theme resources. You just go search for reveal, and you can see that there is, you scroll down, there's a whole bunch of reveal brushes. These are the static ones, so these are not the reveal brushes. Here you can see an example, a reveal background brush and a reveal border brush. So the border brush you would apply to the border of your element, and the background you would apply to the background. And you can also see that in the standard button reveal style. You can see that we set the background to the button reveal background pointer over, and the border to the button reveal border brush pointer over. And if you want to change one of these, change the looks of the button, you don't have to override the whole template. You can just for your control just define new brushes, new theme resource brushes, and that way you don't have to override the whole template, which makes it even easier. Now in our case we did override the template, and since I want to make minimal changes, we're gonna just uncomment these 3 lines and comment out the ones that we already had. Now we don't care as much about the foreground, so we're just going to keep the foreground the same as we had it before. Now one other thing that you have to do to get this effect is you have to set the reveal brush.state attached property to the root grid of the control. You have to set it to the corresponding visual state. So in this case you would set it to pointer over. Now we can do the same for pressed to get the pressed effect. Let's see here. And we set the reveal brush.state to pressed. And for the disabled visual state, we don't really want to have any reveal effects in the first place, so we'll just keep that the way it is. None of our buttons are going to be disabled in the first place, so it's not as important. And we can run it, and then we can see that the reveal effect will also be applied to those buttons on the right. And it's a little more subtle because of the accent color. But it shows that it's very simple to update your styles to use some of the inbox reveal brushes and get the effect on your system. So here we go, building again. And since this is a C++ app, building isn't as fast as I would like it to be with a C# app, but it's the way it is. And now you can see that there is even in the background color there's an effect. It's very subtle. So let me just zoom in and see if that makes the effect show better. So you can see that it's light. It's a little more light where I'm at with my mouse, and then the light slightly moves with the mouse. It's a very subtle effect because of the background color. because of the accent color, I mean. So that's reveal. So now we have reveal added to the app. And the next thing I want to add is I want to change the background of the calculator to add acrylic to it. Now, because the calculator is always a pretty small window, we decided that it would be it's like a utility. We decided to make the whole background of the calculator acrylic. So the way to do that is we go to our main page. We don't care about the designer. And we're just gonna set the background to one of the inbox acrylic brushes. Now we will take a look at where these are defined. Those are also defined in the theme resources. And you can see that there is a whole set of acrylic brushes available in the platform. And those are all slightly different. So you can see one of the things is a background source. So every acrylic brush has a background source. It can either be the backdrop or the host backdrop. The difference between those two things is that the host backdrop will use the content that is behind the window, while backdrop will use the content that is in the app directly below your element. So if you set for your own acrylic brush, you set the background source to backdrop and you apply that brush on the window, you will actually get either a completely white window or a completely black window, because every UWP always has a forced background color. Now we don't want that. We want to use the content behind the window. So we use an acrylic brush that uses a host backdrop as a background source. The other thing is that we have a tint color. So you can give your acrylic brush like a tint color effect, which makes it really easy to integrate with your own custom branding. Like let's say your brand color is green. You can use a green color as your tint color. And you can control the amount of opacity that you want. So we found that for calculator 0.7 worked really well. So we picked a acrylic brush with a 0.7 opacity. And then the last thing that you will see is a fallback color. So you can imagine that if you have like 20 apps running and they all use acrylic, that is not necessarily the best use of acrylic. It can be like distracted, and it will use a lot more of your battery than you would like. So the thing we do is we only apply acrylic on the window that is in focus. And as soon as the focus moves out of the window, we fall back to a different color. And we will disable the acrylic effect, and we will also disable the acrylic effect when your device goes into battery mode, and a range of other things. You can turn off the effects if you don't like them. There's a setting in Windows to turn them off. So picking a good fallback color is also important. And the inbox brushes take care of all that stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So let's see how that looks. Let's see, we need to save this file, and we can run it, and you will see that the acrylic brush is also applied to the whole window now. And it makes it look like the calculator buttons are kind of floating on top of this acrylic panel. Oh, come on, machine. There we go. Right. So you can see now that there is there is now a transparency effect. And if I minimize Visual Studio and PowerPoint and the store, you will get this with this specific bar. You will get a very nice effect where you can really see that it now shines through the window. Now you can also see that this works for our title bar. Now you have to do a little bit of work for that. One of the things you have to do is you have to create an element in your SAML that represents your title bar. Called a custom title bar, and you have to do some code behind code to set to tell the system to not draw its own title bar, but to use this this grid as the title bar. And you can see that we have the app name in there, and it's very important that you set the background to transparent, because that makes your grid a hit target, and it makes sure that you can actually drag your window around. If I would make that null, there would be no way to move the window around. So this is very important that you get that right. And in addition to that, the three buttons in the top, the plus, maximize and minimize, the maximize, minimize, and close, those will still have the system colors applied to it. So you also have to write a little bit of code to say, okay, I want this to be also transparent, so I can get the nice effect of the whole title bar show up there. So that's acrylic. Now, like I said, acrylic brush is just inherits from XAML composition brush base, and you can build your own brushes. So one of the things that I wanted to show is I made an invert brush. So basically what this brush is going to do, it's going to take the background of the window and it's going to apply an invert effect to the background and show that as the background of the app. Now this is not going to look pretty. This is purely to show how you can implement your own brushes if you'd like. So what you would have to do, you have to override two methods, onConnected and onDisconnected. And on disconnected, you have to clean up your brush. So let me walk you through each of the steps that we do here. So we get the host backdrop brush from the window compositor. Now this will give you the brush that you can apply that is for the content that is behind the window. Now if you don't want to do behind the window, or you want to make it an option, you would use create backdrop brush instead of create host backdrop brush to not get the content behind the element, but to get the content behind the window. And we do a quick check to see if the effects are actually supported. Some GPUs or some older devices might not have the capability to actually render this, so we don't want to do any of this work. And the XAML composition brush base will automatically handle the fallback color for you, and you can override that if you'd like. Now we have imported the Win2D NuGet package, and the Win2D NuGet package contains a lot of these additional effects that you can apply. So we have taken the Win2D invert effect. We instantiate a new instance of this here. Don't look at the ref; it's a C++ CX thing. In C# you would just write this. Then you set the source. You create a new composition effect source parameter. You give that a name that you need later to specify the source parameter. And then we make a effect factory, which is the way in Win2D to create the factory for the effect that can then create the brush. We specify the actual effect that we're going to use. The factory will make the brush, and we set the source parameter for the backdrop, and then we assign the actual brush to the composition brush on this XAML composition brush base. And that takes care of all the additional hookup that is required between your composition brush and your XAML brush. Like I said before, this was much harder before we had this base class. And in onDisconnected, we do some cleanup to clean up the brush. Now let's see what we have here. So in the app.xaml, I created this invert brush. I added it to the resource dictionary with a key custom window brush. So let's take custom window brush and apply that to our background color of our background brush. Now let it build. And then we will see a very weird effect. Because now the color is completely inverted. So it looks very, very weird compared to the background. But that is not as important. It's just showing that you can create your own brushes with your own custom effects that might, for example, better work with your branding. And we have light here, but you can of course change the text colors to be dark. That would work much better on this brush. All right. So let's go back to the code. The next thing I want to add is I want to have some more useful input in the calculator app. So one of the things that we currently don't have is context menus. The context menus are really nice because context menus work for each of the input types. You can invoke a context menu with keyboard, mouse, touch, and even in the 3D environments, context menus work. So we added a new control in the Fall Creators update called context flyout. Now let's look at the history list. You can see that I defined a menu flyout here with the delete option. And the only thing I have to do is in my style for my list view item, I'm just setting the context menu, the context flyout to this context menu. So I have two styles because I have a small and a large style. And now if I run this, I already have set up the code behind and handle the events. That is not as important to show for the menu to show up. Oh, we still have the fancy brush in the background. I should get rid of that. So I can do a calculation. It will show up in the history. Now before there was no such option to delete. We only had the clear button in the bottom. And as you can see that there we also support icons now in our menu flyouts. We didn't have that before. So now I can delete and then my element is gone. I can do the same for the memory flyout. Now the other nice thing that we added for specifically for keyboard users is access keys. Access keys are something that is especially nice for to get an overview of where can I go in the app. So you can see that there's like shortcut keys that show up when I press Alt. So we can go to history with I, to memory with M, and we can open the menu with H. And I also added that to the context menu. So we have a D, so I can press D and then it gets deleted as well. Now this is very easy to add. So the only thing we did, or the only thing I did to add this, is to specify. Oh, it's not here. Why is that? Ah, I know why. So let me just add it and explain to you why this did show up even though it wasn't here. Because what we do in the calculator app is we localize our access keys. So what you can see here is the XUID that says the identifier for this element is delete menu item, and in our resource file we have the D specified for the access key on elements with this name, with this XUID, and that's why it shows up. That's a best practice to do to localize access keys because the text on the menu might change in different languages. Now I also didn't hard code text here, so it makes sense that I also put the access key in our resources. If I would just put text is delete here, then it's kind of hard coded, so it makes more sense to also hard code the access key. Now the other thing that I showed before is that we now have swipe. So adding swipe to your list views is very easy as well. You can just add a swipe control in the root of your data templates. So let me do that. And also here as well, and comment the last element. And so the way you add swipe is you put the swipe control in the root of the template, and then you can specify: do I have my items? Do I swipe from the left or do I swipe from the right? By specifying the swipe items in either the left items or the right items. You put a swipe items control under there, and you have we have two different modes. So we have a reveal mode and an action mode. I'm not sure if action is actually the actual word, but the difference between the modes is the reveal you would swipe and then it would stick there, and you would see the options and then you can make the decision which one you want. The other mode will, when you swipe, actually directly invoke the mode. So we can compile that and see what's happening there. Oh, come on. Historical reasons. This is Windows specific, so I don't think that currently works in Xamarin Forms. Yes, Xamarin Forms could on Windows totally make use of this, but I'm not sure if they currently do that. I don't think so. So it's compiling a bunch of things, which it shouldn't, because I only modified SAML. In the meantime, while we will wait for this to compile, let's just go back to the slides to see how you, we did the demo, to see how you can get started today. So important is to use the system styles. It's one of the most important things that we are telling developers. System styles automatically get the updates that we make to them. They are great for accessibility and all kinds of other things that you have to think about when you start customizing. When you customize, you will get behind the updates that we make to the default styles. When we make improvements, more efficient styles, you will automatically get them when you use the system styles. And this link will be available for you in the slides later. With every new SDK, we generally give you a new version of the system styles, so you can also keep track of of the new things that we change and apply them to your custom styles. There we go. It's calculator, and now if I do 9 times 6, oh, sorry. Just go out of the slides and back to the app. So now we can see that I made a calculation, and now there is a swipe effect. That is very specific. When you hit it, it doesn't always come up great. There you go. And then you can also delete this way. Now the way why this is a little clunky is because this is actually in a pivot, and a pivot also uses the right and left swipes. So we are not unlikely to ship it this way in the calculator. But it works nice as a demo to show how swipe works. Now back to the slides. So how can you get started today, and what kind of resources are available for you? We have a whole lot of new capabilities in the Fall Creators Update. Pull to refresh is there as well, which we did in demo. We have a navigation view that we are not yet using in the calculator, but we will eventually, hopefully. We have connected animations, all the kinds of controls, new rating control, a new color picker. Some of the resources that we have for you, aka.ms/Fluent Design, contains all the background and all the details on why we have the Fluent Design and how the Fluent Design helps people create a more efficient app, be more efficient in your app. During Build, Paul Gusmarino and James Clark showed the Buildcast sample. We just published that last week, so it's now available for you to take a look at. And this is, since I cannot publish this calculator source code, this Buildcast sample is a great example for you to look to see and how they implemented this, and how you can implement all the different Fluent styles in your app. And this sample contains a whole lot more capabilities that we have in the Fall Creators Update. It's available at aka.ms/Buildcast, and we'll redirect you to their GitHub repo with all the source. We also have the UWP Samples on GitHub that contains all the new controls that aren't necessarily in the sample, in the Buildcast sample. And this has a lot more details and all the different configurations that you can use for controls and brushes. And with that, I can answer some questions. Yes, sir. The question is, how at Microsoft do we handle the different roles of UX design and development, correct? So we have a set of designers that do a lot of this how is it going to look, and then we do a lot of user research and studies on to see like which of our designs work best and get the best best user satisfaction. And then it's a cooperation between design and engineers on how can we best implement this. So we don't necessarily have a lot of UX roles. There's a lot of mix between design and engineering, and PM of course, who owns the product to together design the experience. Does that answer the question?